So you're using MongoDB. That's awesome. You're working with one of the most flexible and powerful databases on the planet. But here's the catch. That same flexibility, if you're not careful, can leave a massive door wide open for attackers. Today, we're going to talk about how to transform your database from an open vault into a digital fortress. And we're going to start with a number that should really get your attention.
300,000. Yeah, you heard that right. In just the first 3 months of 2021, researchers found 300,000 MongoDB instances totally exposed to the internet without any basic security. Think about that. That's hundreds of thousands of digital vaults with the doors unlocked and the lights on, just waiting for someone to stroll in and take whatever they want.
So, why is this happening? What makes MongoDB such a popular target? Well, it's kind of ironic, actually. The very things that make it so great for developers, its incredible flexibility and how easy it is to get up and running quickly, well, those can become giant security holes if you're in a rush. Hasty setups often means security is an afterthought, and that creates some seriously low-hanging fruit for attackers.
Okay, so where do we even begin to fix this? The absolute first step is the most basic, but it's also the most important. We've got to lock the front door. This is all about controlling who can even get near your database to begin with.
Just take a look at the difference a few simple tweaks can make. On one side, you have the hasty deployment. It's probably using the default port, it has no password, and it's open to the entire internet. That's not just a risk, it's a disaster waiting to happen. But a secure deployment? That locks things down. You're enabling authentication, you're using strong passwords, you're only allowing access from trusted IPs, and you're changing that default port. It's the difference between leaving your keys hanging in the front door and installing a bank vault deadbolt.
This quote really just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? Our data is one of the most valuable things we have. And in this world, privacy and security, they aren't just nice-to-haves. They are an absolute necessity. And you have to have that mindset as we move on to the next layer of control.
All right, a really great way to think about access control is what we call the AAA framework. And honestly, it's just like physical security. Think about it. You need guards to check IDs, you need specific keys for specific doors, and you need cameras to watch what's going on.
First up in AAA is authentication. This is your guard at the front gate. The system is basically asking, who are you? And it's demanding proof, right? Usually a username and a strong password. Just turning on authentication is probably the single easiest way to scare off most attackers and get them to move on to an easier target.
So once someone's authenticated, they're inside the building, now we have authorization. This answers the next question, okay, you're in, but what are you actually allowed to do in here? This is where we give out specific keys for specific rooms, and the golden rule here is the principle of least privilege. You only give users the absolute minimum permissions they need to do their job, nothing more. Not everyone gets the master key, right?
And finally, we have auditing. This is your security camera system. It's logging everything, who did what and when they did it. And trust me, if something does go wrong, this audit log is going to be your #1 tool for figuring out what happened, who's responsible, and how to make sure it never ever happens again.
So how do you manage all of this without going crazy? Well, you use something called Role-Based Access Control, or RBAC. Instead of trying to give permissions to every single user one by one, you create roles. For instance, an analyst might get a read role, a developer gets read-write, and only a system administrator gets that all-powerful DBadmin role. This whole approach is so much cleaner, it's way more manageable, and it just dramatically reduces your risk.
Okay, so we've locked the doors, we've posted the guards, we're checking IDs, but what if a really sophisticated thief still manages to get past all of that? Well, the next layer of defense is about protecting the data itself. We're going to scramble it into something completely unreadable. We're talking about encryption. Now here is a critical piece of information that so many people miss. They think about protecting their data where it's stored, and that's it. But to be truly secure, you have to understand that your data has a life cycle, and it actually exists in 3 distinct and equally vulnerable states.
So, what are these 3 states? First, you have data at rest. That's the information just sitting there, physically saved on a disk. Then you have data in transit, which is when it's moving from your database across the network to an application. And finally, you have data in use, when it's being actively processed in your server's memory. A truly complete security strategy has to cover all 3.
So how do we protect it in each state? Well, for data at rest, we use powerful algorithms like AES-256 to encrypt the files right on the disk. For data in transit, we use TLS/SSL, that's the same tech that secures your online banking, to create a secure, encrypted tunnel. And for the most sensitive data in use, MongoDB has this amazing feature called client-side field-level encryption. This makes sure that things like, say, credit card numbers are never exposed as plain text, not even in the server's memory. It's incredibly powerful.
All right, let's zoom out for a second. We've secured the data itself, which is great, but we also need to secure the entire environment it lives in. It's time to build the walls and the moats of our digital fortress.
Your firewall, that's your main outer wall. It blocks unauthorized traffic before it even gets close. Then you start adding layers. IP whitelisting is like having a super strict guest list at the gate. Changing the default port, that's kind of like hiding the front door so attackers can't just walk up to it. And network segmentation, that's like building internal walls, so if a breach does happen, it's contained to one tiny area.
Now, for our final and, maybe our most important section. All of this stuff is fantastic, but security is not a set it and forget it kind of thing. It's a habit. It has to be an ongoing process of just being vigilant.
And that vigilance needs to become a routine, a checklist you follow. This means regularly applying security patches to close up any new vulnerabilities. It means maintaining frequent backups because that's your ultimate safety net. It means you should be actively testing your own defenses with tools to find weak spots before the bad guys do. And finally, you have to regularly audit who has access to what, because permissions that are no longer needed are just a liability waiting to be exploited.
And that brings us right to the final question you need to ask yourself. After everything we've just talked about, take a second and really think about your own systems. Right now, is your data sitting in an open vault, or is it protected inside a secure fortress? The good news is all the tools you need to build that fortress are right in front of you.